What's up guys, Endemic here. I'm bringing y'all a character guide on Catalyst. I think she is a very high skill gap and high game sense based character with a strong defensive and offensive kit. And I'm going to tell y'all why I think that 99% of these players are playing her wrong. Just as a few disclaimers, these clips are taken from season 17, so keep in mind that the skill levels vary of the players. And also I am on console, but I believe a lot of my insight can be applied to PC as well. And for those of you who care about stats, here are my stats as well to show that I have some credibility. Getting right into it with the first part of the video, sustain and locking down a building is super strong with Catalyst. I think she's the strongest defensive legend capable of this with her passive of reinforcing doors, rebuilding doors, and also the piercing spikes, of course, and even the dark veil when it gets bad. I'm not going to talk extensively about this. I think most players are somewhat understanding of this. I might make a separate video on it when Stormpoint and Broken Moon, her stronger two maps for this, are up. So when you're setting up a building, I want you to think about the reinforced doors with the piercing spikes underneath as walls essentially of a building. So you know that you're shutting down a potential sightline. You know that they can't get in unless they commit extensive amounts of resources, grenades, and most of the time you can just reinforce that instantly. Specifically for season 17 and this guide, I want to talk about her offensive capabilities. Even in these situations where you are locked down, a lot of the times you can swing out on the other team and get easy picks on them and then return back to safety. Coordinate with your team and use the piercing spikes to figure out when an enemy is going to swing and when they are there. This helps a lot with this. For her piercing spikes, the easiest tip I can give you guys is that when you throw it against the wall, it's going to land parallel to whatever wall you hit. So use this to shut down future sightlines and buildings that you're pushing so that enemies have a harder time of pushing through. They have to take a lot of damage if they want to shoot. Make sure to put it on the door hinge side so that they have to walk through to be able to shoot it. As well as when you're setting up a building, make sure to put your spikes underneath as shown and put them sideways so that when you have to kick down the wall, they're going to take a lot of damage unless they're Catalyst. For the rebuilt doors that you put up, make sure to put the spikes underneath first, because if you don't, they won't travel through, and the regular rebuilt doors are absolutely terrible for locking down a building. You can also, of course, do this when people are healing on the door. You should almost never have to kick down a door when you're playing as Catalyst. You can always force people off of the door. The damage from the spikes is not the main focus of them. The slowdown is much more devastating to enemies. But as you can see in the clip here, the enemies decide to just not shoot it, and you can see just how much damage they can really do. The main point of the spikes, in my opinion, is just simply space denial. You can cause a whole wide area that if an enemy pushes through it, they're going to experience a large slow effect and honestly risk a one clip from you. You can actually use them very predictively as well for when you crack that opponent and you know that they're going to run back. As you can see, we get an easy team fire because of this. When you're in these 1v1 situations and you're playing a knockdown, you want to make sure to use the piercing spikes to deny space. Like I said before, these spikes and the slow that they cause cannot be ignored, and oftentimes they're going to open themselves up to one clips and taking a lot of damage. As you can see here, I end up clutching for my team because of this, and because I created an area that is unpushable for the enemy without taking a lot of damage. I deny the space behind the knockdown, and I actually also use the spikes as a knockdown to block damage. They have 300 HP and you can almost always crouch behind them assuming an enemy is around. Continuing on the topic of space denial, you can also see when you're pushing a fight how I throw these cues predictively, and then I also deny space for the future fight that I take. So I throw them up and I go ahead and shut down the building so that they can't peek or heal behind that door. Next up, I'm going to take a bat because I'm weak, and then I'm going to start playing around the area that I have, and I'm going to continue to create a safe area for me and my team that I can play around. We're even at a disadvantage. This is a 2v3, and as you can see, I try to throw my spikes off of cooldown, and I'm constantly throwing them to make sure that the space that they can play is changing and also make it difficult for them to play aggressive on me and my team. As previously mentioned, the spikes can also be used as proximity detectors. We have a team outside in this clip, and I know that because my spike went off there, that he has to be close left, sitting in the corner because of the spike going off. Otherwise, he would be too far away. I swing him, I wall him off, and we clean up the rest of the fight. You can almost always trust these spikes to know when to swing out on people. However, they do go off with Marvin, so be aware of that. Kato's ultimate ability, the Dark Veil, also known as just the Wall, is a very strong, versatile, and powerful ability. I'm going to split up talking about it into different categories, as I believe it's very multifaceted and can be used so many different ways, and I want to focus on each way in particular. Here I'm focusing on using it for defense and securing a rotate for me and my team, because we were getting shot from top solar and we want to take the space that this team was occupying us and get us out of a bad position. In a slightly different case scenario, I'm here separated from my team, and I'm getting pressured by a team up on the building. I get cracked, but I see them all pushing me, so I put up the wall and I start running, and I evade them using the wall, and I have my team to support me shortly after, and then we re-engage the fight and wipe them. Moving over to the offensive capabilities of the Dark Veil, here I use a separation technique. So I notice a Rampart on his own on the left. His teammates are both on the right side of the wall now. I have a free 1v1 to take on the left side, and I separate him out from his team so that his teammates can't interfere with me in my fight. Similar to how I mentioned that piercing spikes can be used to catch an opponent out and catch them predictively, you can see here that I use a separation wall to prevent the Newcastle from getting to his team. He decides to tank the wall, he walks through it, and he's blinded and slowed, which makes an easy clip for me, and then we wipe the rest of his team pretty effectively, and it makes it a rather quick fight. So for this next clip, I want to talk about how I use the separation wall to actually take this team fight here. So when I'm engaging in a fight, I'm automatically going to put up the Dark Veil. And in this case scenario, I end up catching out the Bangalore, and I end up being able to play up off of that and clean up the rest of the fight. They have a Catalyst on their team, which means you get to have a very fun fight where you almost create a cross section. And here I just find the Catalyst, and it's a quick cleanup. Moving on with more Dark Veil offensive abilities, I want to talk about closing the gap using your wall and walling up. A big part of this is that you need to be aware that the enemies are going to try to sight down your wall at the end of it, and they're going to try to play that section. So make sure you're aware of that and are looking ahead. Also, when you're putting up the wall, Catalyst is very vulnerable as you're locked into the animation with your hands. I talk about a way to alleviate that later on, but you can also use a Bangalore like in this clip, or even a Newcastle to help with this. As the game progresses, the walls get stronger and stronger. The amount of space that you're taking proportionate to the zone, and also the fact that the teams are very concentrated, makes it very hard for other teams to interfere with your fights. When you have a wall up, it's more likely that they're gonna fight the teams that are close to them than go and peek a wall endgame. When you get to the final rings as well, make sure that you put your wall in a spot that both sides are closed off from the storm to prevent the other team being able to rotate around your wall. Next up, I'm going to talk about wall surfing and 1v1s. What do I mean by wall surfing? Essentially, wall surfing to me is just being able to play your wall and taking your 1v1s with it. This character can be very good at taking 1v1s, and it can almost become a crutch when you have your wall and you have to take these 1v1s. When I mentioned at the beginning of the video why this character requires such high game sense, this is what I mean. You really need to know what's on the other side of the wall every single time you're putting it up, so that when you peek, you know how to peek and when. Because a lot of the times, if you don't know what obstacles on the other side, you're hindering yourself, and you won't be able to land that one clip right behind them. Usually I like to peek around 75% of the way deep of the distance of the wall, because usually teams are going to be about halfway. Here's the basic clip showing you why it's important to play the middle of your wall versus the edge of your wall. At the end of the walls, a lot of enemies are going to be there, and you won't have as much obscurity and particles to help you. A big mistake that I see is that a lot of people try to use the wall too defensively, but the wall should actually be giving you confidence to play it, and if you're not going to play it, it's a waste of a wall. Because a lot of the times you're able to make plays with this character and take 1v2, 1v3 situations like in this clip you see now. We're finally getting to the crux of why I think so many players are playing this character all wrong. I think a lot of the times, because she's a defensive character slotted in with Caustic, Rampart, and Watson, I think players pick her up thinking that she's very similar when she actually has great opportunities to cut off sightlines, take 1v1s, and even get full resets off when they definitely shouldn't happen. You can see how much confidence the wall gives me whenever I'm able to play it and how I'm able to take these fights and not be scared. I'm taking 1v1s by myself, both of my teammates are dead, and I'm still continuing the fight because I have this wall up. The second that it goes down, my mindset changes and I'm focusing more on getting a reset and getting out of the situation. As a Catalyst, you should be very creative with your walls. None of these are meant to serve as wall lineups, but to serve as giving you the philosophy, and then you take those and create what you want with them. Every fight's going to be different with this character. As you can see here, I peek the wall 75% of the way through and get right behind them, and then I'm able to clean up the rest of the fight and dip into the wall whenever I get weak. Here we have a team bunkering at the front of carrier, and I decide to wall and split the room in half to give me space to play and allow my teammates to get through this choke point with me behind. They stay focused on my teammates and I'm able to get a free clip in the back, and then as soon as they focus on me, I start playing the wall and using a super glide and some movement to maintain myself. And while this is not about my aim in this clip, it should show you how I can stay alive and use the wall to force through choke points. This next category is just other interactions, and essentially it's stuff that I couldn't really fit anywhere else in her abilities. First off is this finisher tech. I learned this from a kill grinder for Catalyst in a video. And essentially you can use the finisher to glitch yourself into the wall and you're actually invulnerable. So when you do this, you want to position yourself so that your body will actually be in the wall. You can see here, this makes it so when his teammate peeks the door, I'm not actually there. I'm actually in the wall / outside of the building. This is pretty situational, but can be very handy. To help with the weakness that I mentioned earlier, you can actually wall bounce or mantle when you're putting up the wall to cancel the animation. Next, you can actually have permanent wall up time. You can't have two up at the same time, but you can have one up back to back with 2 ulted cells and a gold helmet. You want to be very creative with your wall placement, and in this case I showcased that the wall actually leaps down further than it wants to leap up. So you can create weird situations where you can either push high ground or push down using a ramp or steps that would otherwise be used for climbing. Thanks guys for watching. If you liked it, make sure to leave a like, comment. I'll answer all the comments. If you guys have any questions, also come check out my stream. I'll answer any questions there, and I also do coaching for my supporters through channel points and also subscribers as well. Thanks guys.